Excuse me. Good evening, everybody. My name is Ryan here, alongside Caleb. This is Indiana Weather Network, alongside our partner accounts of Indiana Weather Online and Indiana Storm Chasing Network. This is our first severe weather briefing that we are doing here since we took over operations here at IWN. So, for those of you just tuning in, current time on your screen is 8 p.m. on the dot. We're going to go over timing, areas to watch, hazards, all of the information you guys need to plan your day and prepare yourselves for tomorrow's severe weather risk. But before we dive into this, let's go ahead and take a step back and say good evening to all of you. Let us know if you can hear us okay and where you're watching from. Let us know here in chat. We'll go ahead and say hi to you guys and we'll dive into things here in just a moment or two. Anybody here in chat, or is my chat not working? I'm curious now. Oh, there it is. We got Storm Chaser Burgie in chat here. Got Erica. There we go. Chats are now flying in. There we go. Perfect. Kayleen, what's up? Lowell, Williamsport, Howard County. What's up, Kim? Good evening to you guys. Deb, here come all the chats. We're a little delayed here. Michael, Savannah, Chloe, Pam. What's up, guys? Good to see you in here. San Antonio, Texas. Well, good evening from Texas. Fishers, Muncie, Hancock, Fulton County, Greene County. All right, guys, we're all over the place tonight. It's awesome. Awesome. So, again, if you're just joining us, this is going to be a severe weather briefing for tomorrow's severe weather threat here. This is our first briefing since taking over operations here at IWN. Let's go ahead and dive in to the forecast, and we'll take a look at models here for tomorrow. Let's go ahead and start. The overall outlook here, this is from the Storm Prediction Center, the government agency who issues the official outlooks here from Norman, Oklahoma. We have a level 3 out of 5, 5 being the worst, a high risk, and then 1 being the lowest, a marginal risk. We are kind of in the middle there, an enhanced risk, which is an orange, level 3 out of 5 for a good majority of the state. But even around that, down here, closer to Corridon and Bloomington areas, we do have a level 2, and up here by Gary, level 2 risk. That's a slight risk for severe weather here. So all this is saying is, hey, we got risks across the entire state. Highest risk seems to be centered across north and perhaps western parts of the state. Now, hazards per the SPC, the main risk for your tomorrow time frame is going to be damaging winds. That red zone is going to be the highest probability for damaging winds. It extends up into central Michigan all the way down through about the southeast corner of Missouri, and includes areas in Indiana like South Bend, Fort Wayne, Lafayette, Muncie, Indianapolis, Bloomington, Terre Haute, Vincennes, and any place in between there. Good population center here affected by this corridor. Now, secondary risk, large hail. In the yellow area, that is your highest probability. So pretty much the entire state minus the south and east corner there of the state there down by Corridon area. Pretty straightforward. And then last but not least, any risk for a tornado? And the answer is yes, it is. And it's a 5% risk here there in the reddish brown color there. A good chunk of the state in that 5% risk. And a 2% down there in green for South Indiana. So a lower risk the further south you go there for a couple tornadoes in the state. Let's go ahead and talk about timing and what to expect via the forecast models here. So we have 4 models we have pulled up here. We have those all pulled up because they all say something different. And that's going to be the highlighted uncertainty with this briefing, and hopefully answer you guys' questions here as well. The most commonly used model that we use here at IWN is called the HRRR, the High Resolution Rapid Refresh Model. This is typically the most accurate model in our experience. Sometimes it does well, usually it does well. Sometimes it's way off though, okay? So take it with a grain of salt. We're gonna run this through the evening here. A couple showers there across central and south Indiana tonight. Those should not be severe. Overnight tonight, we could get some pop-ups, especially across the north and west half of the state. This time here at 3 in the morning tonight, up by Gary and Rensselaer, could have a couple showers and storms popping up there. Those should not be strong or severe. Overnight here, here's 5 o'clock in the morning Eastern time, 6, 7. Here's about sunrise here, 8. Ongoing showers and storms possible. Again, not expected to be severe here to start our morning. As we move toward Wednesday afternoon, we're going to clear out. That's going to allow sunshine to come out, instability to build, storm fuel to build, moisture to build. It's going to allow a potent environment to take shape here ahead of a approaching low pressure system, which is right here. It's going to potentially bring storms across the line here, pushing into Indiana by the early afternoon hours. So here's 1 p.m. Do take note, our first storms here that could be severe are arriving up in the Gary area around the 1 p.m. time frame or so. All right, let's go ahead and jump forward to 2 p.m. We have an arc developing here. We have up by Gary still that storm develops. Also some development down here by Kokomo. So keep that in mind. 2 p.m. here. Let's go to 3 p.m. Let's go to 4 p.m. and then there is your main line developing here across central, southern, and do take note the northern half as of 4 p.m. Eastern here does not have storms. But by the time you get to 5 o'clock, those storms do exist. So they're going to pop up as the afternoon goes on. But the HRRR model does show this line developing all the way across the state of Indiana. Just going to take some time to develop. So some areas may get missed as these storms develop. We're not going to promise you're going to get a storm tomorrow, but there is definitely a risk across the entire state for severe if storms can affect your area. This is 5 p.m. Let's go to 6 p.m., 7 p.m., and by about the 8 p.m. time frame, that main line is now pushed into Ohio and Michigan. That leaves us with just lingering showers and perhaps a few storms. The back end of this, these little pop-up storms back over here and up here, those should not be strong or severe. Any severe weather should occur with the main line that pushes into Ohio by about that 7 or 8 o'clock time frame. That is one model. Okay, let's go ahead and jump to another model here. This is called the RRFS, the Rapid Refresh model. This is also a model that's done pretty well this year. Let's go ahead and see what it says here. Let's go ahead and run this through tonight into the overnight hours here. A couple showers out there, not too much to be concerned about. As we get to tomorrow afternoon here at 2 p.m., a similar picture is shown with storms developing across that northwest Indiana area. But do keep in mind here, this is 3 p.m., 4 p.m., 5 p.m., 6 p.m. This model really cuts any storms south of I-70 completely off to a point that they don't really exist at all. So this model says the threat is much higher to the north and not much to the south because of lacking storm coverage. So that could be a solution we see play out tomorrow. It's an uncertainty that we're not going to know until we get more confidence in models or until it actually happens tomorrow. Now, other model here, the NAM3. This is a model that does pretty well. Typically, it has its quirks, but it does agree with the RRFS model. As we move into the overnight period tonight, we have some storms out there across northern Indiana. But as we get to the afternoon hours tomorrow, again, keep in mind this model does show north and west Indiana getting the best storm coverage, while the southern half of the state is like, where's our storms? So that's another thing we have to keep an eye on as well. And the last but not least, one of the other models we use called the FV3 model. This model is really showing us, again, storms overnight tonight possible, but as we move into the Wednesday time frame, we're going to see a line develop here. This is at 4 o'clock here. Do take note, similar picture. Got the storms up there in northwest Indiana, but this model says a big line is going to develop here across the entire state, similar to the HRRR model. It's just a little bit later in nature. This is at 9 p.m. on this model here. I don't think the timing's accurate per se on this one, but it gives us the idea that, hey, we could have more widespread storms via this model here. So we have 4 solutions showing 2 or so different pictures and scenarios that could play out. The most likely scenario is that the northern half of the state will see the best storm coverage. So we're going to draw it out here. I do personally believe really north of Indianapolis has the best chance tomorrow to see a severe storm. I'm not saying it's not going to happen south of Indianapolis, but the coverage of storms is much more uncertain that far south, leading us to believe the higher confidence in severe happening is north of I-70, north of Indianapolis. Okay?
Yeah, and another big reason for that, Ryan, is because some models have been hinting at a cap developing south of Indianapolis where we get some warm air aloft. Some of you may recall during our last severe weather event, we had a cap in place that didn't actually prevent storms from firing at all. And that could be a similar setup that we're going to have to watch across central and southern Indiana. Every time you get a capping inversion, which is like shaking a soda bottle, you have all that potential energy there, but it cannot become kinetic energy because you have a lid on the bottle. So that's essentially what some models are suggesting tomorrow, south of Indianapolis. You have a lid on the atmosphere, some warm air aloft. You're further away from that low. That's your forcing. That's your rising air, right? So depending on how that plays out will largely determine if storms are able to fire along the cold front the further south you go. So, like Ryan said, a couple different scenarios here to watch, but all of which are possible, Ryan. I don't really think we can discount one entirely.
Yeah, we really can't discount it, but based on models, I will say that northern half is definitely more certain than the southern half, which is why you should take it seriously in the southern half of the state. We just don't know for sure, like we kind of know for sure up in northern Indiana. That's kind of what we're communicating here for you guys here. A lot of questions filling in here on timing and hazards. Let's go ahead and talk about timing. I actually loaded a map in for you guys. We actually posted it just before we went live here on the page. This is the rough estimate of your storm arrival. Your keyword there is arrival. So we could see storms arrive as early as 12 to 2 p.m. in that blue zone across western Indiana. In the central part of the state, 2 to 4 p.m. is the more likely start time for you. And then if you're over on the east side, over there by Richmond or Fort Wayne, you guys have more of a 3 to 6 p.m. window for storm arrival time. And again, keyword here is arrival. This is not going to be the, the exact time frames it's going to be over. It could start at 12, it could go till 3, okay? But this is just your arrival time of storms, okay? So expect arrival between these time frames based on your location here on the map.
Yep, and if you're also in area shaded in blue, there's also a chance that you may not see rain tomorrow.
Yes.
Depending on where these storms develop. That cold front's going to be moving through at about that time, but the question mark is, are storms going to be able to fire along that cold front in the blue zone, or are they going to wait to fire until they're in the yellow zone? That's some little bit of a question that's yet to be answered and likely won't be answered until tomorrow.
Yep. We did highlight that in the map there on the graphic there as well. It communicates when storms would arrive if they develop across the entire state. So that's also a keyword there. As far as hazards go with this, if we see a big line like the RRFS is showing, like kind of like this, wind is going to be the big threat with this. I would not be surprised, though, to see a couple embedded spin-up tornadoes within that line, too, because we do have enough wind shear out there to mention tornadoes as a threat. I wouldn't suggest hail would be a large concern with a line like this. Wind, definitely primary concern, followed by a risk for a couple brief spin-up tornadoes that should be on the weaker side in nature if they do occur. So similar, if you guys think back to like March 30th or so, that day we had a kind of a line pushed through northern Indiana into Michigan. That day we had a couple tornadoes and mostly just wind damage with that. So this is a little bit of a similar scenario. But if we get more so isolated storms, kind of like what the ARRR is depicting, you see it's like a line here, but there's also cells within this line. We could see more of a hail risk and maybe perhaps a little bit more of a tornado risk per se the further north you go. But I think the wind is definitely the primary hazard with any of these cells. But again, if we get into a line, wind, tornadoes, lower hail, whereas individual cells, wind, hail, and then perhaps a few tornadoes with those cells. So it's all going to depend on storm mode tomorrow and how this is all going to play out, because there's still a lot of uncertainty here. We can't say for sure. What we can say, though, going back to the map here, is the entire state has parameters for severe weather. It doesn't matter if you're in Evansville or South Bend, you have parameters tomorrow that support severe weather. It's just a matter of if we can get storms to fire up across the entire state or only sections of the state. Caitlin asked a good question here in chat. Caleb, what stations can I tune in to watch storm coverage or a live stream? Caitlin, we're going to be live tomorrow right here at Indiana Weather Network. You can tune in right here as soon as the first warning is issued. Caleb and I will be live tomorrow. There's also plenty of other places you can watch as well, but you can watch right here, IWN. I'm not really, I'm not actually familiar with all the news stations across Indiana. I'm sure there's really good ones out there as well, but we'll be live right here at IWN on YouTube and Facebook for streaming.
We'll have the most consistent live coverage, to put it that way. Yeah. We'll be covering statewide coverage. A lot of your local news stations, they have their localized counties that they cover. Well, they'll break in TV recordings to cover those counties. Well, we'll break in and we'll do live coverage for all of the counties here in Indiana from beginning to end without commercial break here. So there is that advantage here.
Yep. Any questions, guys? Feel free to pop those in chat. If you're on Facebook, if you're on Facebook and you want to be notified when we go live, you can type in the word exclamation point and the word notify all smushed together. And that will give you a Facebook notification in your timeline anytime that we go live here on IWN. If you're on YouTube, if you're subscribed, you can also click the notification bell, and that will also push an alert to your phone when we go live.
Yep, the good news is, looking ahead, though, Ryan, after this system, we look to dry out a little bit, but it is going to get hot.
Yes.
Are they going to weaken the further they go? I assume the further east they go. They will, but it'll take a little bit. So, according to a lot of models here, storms look to develop here across central Indiana. They could develop as far west as the Illinois-Indiana line, but they're likely going to be at their strongest point while they're in Indiana. At least according to guidance and data that we have right now. They'll likely weaken a little bit with eastward extent, but possibly not until entering Ohio, or perhaps out of Indiana, before they weaken and run out of the instability and fuel that these storms need to sustain themselves. Hopefully we see a weakening trend early in Indiana, but right now I just don't see that at this point in time. And a lot of that is because of timing. These storms are going to come during peak afternoon hours. We have peak daytime heating. All the ingredients are ripe. They're fresh right out of the oven. Versus Ohio, you're a little bit later in the day. You're losing the daytime heating, and you're going to have lesser forcing as well. There's just not as good dynamics the further east you go in Ohio versus the better instability, better ingredients that you have here in Indiana. When we talk severe weather, a lot of times you hear us mention SLIM. We need shear, lift, instability, and moisture. All of those things you have here in Indiana tomorrow, and where you see those brighter colors, this is our instability. The brighter the reds, the yellows, anywhere you see reds, yellows, and even a little bit of black there, that's the greater amount of instability. Notice the further east you go into Ohio or behind the cold front across Illinois, you see blues and greens. Those are areas where you don't have as much fuel, not as much oomph in the atmosphere needed for these storms to sustain themselves. So, to answer your question, unfortunately, in Indiana, I don't think we're going to see a weakening trend until after they move into Ohio. We could see it start earlier, depending on how late these storms fire. If we see a later trend, if let's say this area of low pressure slows down and storms don't fire till 3, 4 o'clock, we could perhaps see a weakening trend before they exit Indiana into Ohio. But right now, guidance suggests an earlier arrival time, and that would suggest a stronger potential for these storms in Indiana. So I hope that answered your question there. We always hope for the best. We hope these storms weaken, but unfortunately right now the data we have suggests that we could see some severe weather tomorrow in the state of Indiana, especially north of Indianapolis, I think has the best chance. But parameters exist across the entire state tomorrow.
Yep. And looking at that too, I mean, the parameters here, we just took a look at the instability here, but coupled the instability with wind shear, because wind shear is another component to severe weather. That parameter space is definitely higher across, we're going to say north of Bloomington here. There is still some down here. I'm not going to discount the south part of the state, but definitely better parameters when the wind shear overlaps for organization of storms further north you go, and especially up there north of Indianapolis from like Kokomo up to Gary. And as that moves to the east, that'll kind of push eastward too. So,
yep. And these storms will use some of that storm fuel up. They'll gobble it up as they move east as well. And that's another reason why, as we looked at guidance earlier, you saw kind of a secondary line of showers developing after these storms moved out. But the reason we don't think those are becoming strong to severe is because there's not enough fuel left.
Yep.
Round one ate it all up. There's just not enough fuel remaining to sustain any more severe weather behind our main complex and along the cold front itself. Our main line will use a lot of that energy up, and there's just not enough time for the atmosphere to recover before the sun goes down and the cold front moves through. I say cold front in quotes because it's not going to get very cold behind our cold front, but it will stabilize the air enough to prevent severe weather.
Yep. And as Kev just mentioned there, this is where the line would be about 7 o'clock in the evening, pushing out of the state into Ohio. You can see the better instability is still out there across Ohio over here in those reds and yellows, but back here there's just not much to work with. So visually depicted there on radar as well, or on the
Chris Blast, so what time will it be over? I'd say overall statewide timing anywhere between 12 p.m. Eastern time through about, let's say, 9 p.m. Eastern time. That noon to 9 p.m. is kind of a rough window between beginning to end. Areas across western Indiana, you will see your severe weather threat end earlier and a little bit later for portions of eastern Indiana. Just depending on where those storms develop and how fast they progress eastward across the state will determine when you're in the all clear. But after the main line moves through, your severe weather risk should be ending after that main line moves through.
Yep.
So you'll see areas of eastern Indiana clear up first, and then followed by central and eastern Indiana after that.
Yep. We'll also
And
post
we will
all
go live
clears.
tomorrow. Yeah. Yep. We'll post all clears and we'll post that information on our pages.
Yep.
And to answer Lisa's question here, yeah, we will go live as soon as the severe thunderstorm warning is issued in Indiana. If we see storms develop early and we see a big complex develop in Indiana, we may go live a few minutes early to give you areas some heads up, especially across northwest Indiana, as some guidance suggests that we may see storms fire early as well.
Yep.
So
We'll
we
be
will
here
keep
in
an
the
eye on
studio.
that. We'll post radar updates
Yep.
on our pages as well. So we will be here all day tomorrow monitoring
Yep.
conditions here.
Could a storm pop up in an earlier area at a later time? For example, a 4 p.m. storm in a 12 to 2 zone. Once that line is passed, really, the risk for anything popping up behind it, yeah, there's a little bit of risk there, but it shouldn't be strong or severe in nature. So yes, the answer is yes, it's possible, but it shouldn't be of too much of a concern for you.
Yeah, and on the other side of that question, could storms fire ahead or early of the main line? It's possible, but there's not a lot of forcing. So we talked about our cap, right? We need shear, lift, instability, and moisture. Well, storms can't fire on shear, moisture, and instability alone. You need a lift mechanism, and that area of lift is our cold front or our surface boundary that's going to fire the squall line off where those storms are firing on your screen right there. So we could have some showers and storms fire ahead of that, but they're likely going to be short-lived because they don't really have forcing to keep them going. They don't really have a trigger that's going to allow those storms to sustain themselves until they have the cold front behind them, allowing them to be pushed along, but also lifted up at the same time. So,
And also keep in mind, too, we do have storms, perhaps some showers and storms in the state as early as sunrise tomorrow. Like, here's a look at 6 o'clock in the morning tomorrow. We got Lafayette getting impacted there by a couple thunderstorms, down there by Bloomington as well. These will exist ahead. By the time we get to about that, we're going to say 10 o'clock time frame, we should be drying out across the state. So do expect storms in the morning. Those should not be severe.
now there could always be a low-end risk for maybe some small hail, I think pea-size hail, but I think heavy rain is going to be the biggest hazard with any of those thunderstorms here tonight. But don't be alarmed if you wake up to a rumble of thunder here early tomorrow morning, whether on your way to work or just before you wake up to go to work. You may hear that rumble of thunder here early this morning.
Yep.
Or early tomorrow morning.
See a question in
Any
chat
other
here.
questions? Yeah.
Do you think Muncie will have a tornado? So it's a possibility, but we can never tell you guys in advance where and when they're going to happen. Like, if we could do that, there'd be no need for us to really be here to tell you guys this risk and walk you guys through live streams and stuff like that. If we knew all the information, we'd tell you, but it's not an exact science. So yes, there's a risk tomorrow, and the risk is actually across the entire state. No matter if you're in South Bend or Evansville, it's a higher risk in that brownish red color there than it is in the green color, but still there's a risk across the entire state. We could see a tornado tomorrow. And I will also say this as well, Caleb. We talked about this behind the scenes a little bit. Upgrades, shifting, stuff like that possible? The answer is yes. I would not be shocked to see the enhanced get pulled just north to include the Gary area, for example. I would also suggest that the SPC could add a 10% risk for a tornado, primarily close to low pressure system, which would be up here somewhere across the very far northern half of Indiana. Definitely possibly that they could increase the risk here for tornadoes. And also,
And a lot of that will be determined on confidence.
yeah,
We want to see a little bit more agreement between model runs as to what storm mode we're going to have. Storm mode meaning, are these storms going to be isolated supercells, and for how long before they grow into a squall line?
Yep.
We call that growing upscale. The longer these storms are isolated by themselves, and the longer they have the ability to take advantage of the wind shear that's up there, and that could in turn have a greater tornado risk perhaps. But on the other end of the spectrum, if these storms do not remain by themselves very long and they quickly grow upscale into a line or a storm complex, we could see the other end, Ryan. We could see a 10% hatch for winds, perhaps too, if we do see that mature complex develop and push eastward as well. So a lot of different things to look at tomorrow and a lot of different scenarios as well. We could see scattered storms or we could see a large line of storms, really just depending on how the atmosphere evolves tomorrow afternoon.
Yep. And going off of what Caleb said there, we're not going to know that until really tomorrow morning and afternoon. I see a question here from Hannah. When you guys going to know more information? And the answer really, for confidence, we can see model agreement as early as 10 o'clock tonight. We have a staff meeting here at 9 o'clock to watch models come in. We're going to make some decisions based on that model guidance. But then really, we're not going to know what's actually going to happen, storm mode and all that, until it actually happens tomorrow. We'll have a good idea perhaps tonight or as early as tomorrow morning. But really, nothing really beats when you get into tomorrow morning and the afternoon hours. We're actually going to see it happen. At that point, we can tell
the
you
key
guys
phrase
exact.
there is guidance, model guidance. Guidance can get you close, but it can never get you entirely exact. That's what comes down to what we call mesoanalysis. And mesoanalysis is a tool that we use to look at real-time data in atmospheric trends. Those are real numbers that we look at during the day tomorrow on the day of events. And by looking at those numbers, that'll tell us, all right, what do we have? Do we have enough ingredients? Are we going to get cookies or are we going to get dough? Are we going to get the full severe weather event or are we going to get mush? What are we actually going to have? So for example, like today, just now, we're looking at two scenarios, right? We could have a squall line that could develop across the entire state of Indiana, or we could have a storm complex that solely impacts northern Indiana and south of Indianapolis, stays hot, humid, and dry. So those are a couple scenarios that we have on guidance tonight, but looking at the numbers in real time tomorrow will give us a better idea of which one is going to come into fruition and where those storms ultimately develop. So model guidance can get you close. As it can tonight, we have two scenarios where we could have storms across the entire state or just part of the state. But those real-time numbers and data tomorrow will give us the real picture of what we will likely expect. And it'll also help us determine how strong and intense these storms are going to be too, looking at the actual data that comes in tomorrow. So a lot of moving parts to severe weather. It's definitely very complex at times.
Do you think spotters are going to be needed tomorrow? Caitlin, good question. That's an absolute yes. Well, our chasers and our staff will be out across the state. And I'm sure NWS will activate their spotters as well. If you guys read their hazardous weather outlooks that they post every afternoon, they'll likely activate them, yeah. Yeah, and as Caleb just mentioned as well, these models are never going to be exact. They can get you close, and sometimes they can be pretty spot on. Although, as of late, it's becoming more rare that they're spot on. But there's a lot of scenarios that could still play out here. It's best to just kind of wait, sit back until you have either A, a lot of models saying the exact same thing, or B, you get to real time, you're watching it develop before your eyes, and it's no longer a guidance, it's actually happening in front of you. And yeah, there is a risk, again, tomorrow across the entire state, and that is due to large amounts of wind shear as well as instability that overlap. So if a storm goes up in this environment, it has potential to become severe, but the biggest thing in question is where we're going to get storms. And that right now is higher confidence north Indianapolis, lower confidence for storms south of Indianapolis.
Another way to look at it is using the analogy of a pot of boiling water. So in that zone, Ryan, if you can highlight all the yellow and red there, that is our area of instability. That's our pot of boiling water. A pot of boiling water, as the water heats up, those bubbles want to rise. That represents our air parcels in the atmosphere wanting to rise and condense into thunderstorms, in this case, severe thunderstorms. Something that we don't know is we know we have a pot of boiling water, but where exactly does that first bubble rise and condense into a thunderstorm? That is what we don't know. And that is what we won't know until we look at satellite imagery tomorrow and real-time data trends. Only then will we know where that first bubble will rise and how far south those bubble rises and condense into thunderstorms. That's another analogy to look at it, and another reason why we can't really dial down per city. What will my town see tomorrow exactly? What hazard will I see definitely tomorrow? And that's the reason why we really can't do that. We can look at the parameters. We can say, well, all right, well, this whole area has the potential for this, but we can't exactly dial it into your specific town. If we could, that would be awesome. I would love to tell you exactly what you're going to see or not see tomorrow. But unfortunately, technology is just not there yet. And I don't know if it'll ever get there. And the reason for that is the atmosphere is fluid. It behaves as such, and it's also ever changing because of that. There's ever changing attributes Dynamics numbers are ever changing, ever evolving, and there's so many mechanics at work here that because it's ever evolving, we'll just unfortunately we maybe ever never be able to dial it in to that localized of a scale.
A lot of questions about timing. We'll do two things here. This is a map we made. It's on the page here. This is arrival timing of storms, assuming storms impact everybody. Obviously, that's the worst case scenario. Storms will likely miss some people, okay? But let's just assume for a minute that storms will impact everybody in the state. This is when you can expect storms to arrive in Eastern Daylight Time. So 12 p.m. to 2 p.m. there across the western part of the state. In the central part of the state, 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. And on the eastern part of the state in purple there is 3 p.m. to 6 p.m. That is your arrival time. All right. This is posted on our page. Feel free to go back and look at it if you want to look at it more. But we're also going to do this as well. This is the forecast model we're going to go with for right now. This is called the HRRR. All right. This is 1 p.m. here, Eastern time, 2 p.m., 3 p.m., 4 p.m., 5 p.m., 6 p.m., 7 p.m., 8 p.m., 9, 10, 11, and then there is midnight. Okay, that's one model. Let's go to one more model here and walk you guys through what this model says. This is through tonight into tomorrow morning, and now we're at 2 p.m. Eastern time tomorrow. Here's 3 p.m., 4 p.m., 5 p.m., 6 p.m., 7 p.m., 8, 9, 10, 11, and then there is midnight. Okay, so that is going to be your rough estimate of timing there. Again, this timing map that we just put on the screen is posted on our page. Feel free to go back and find it. It should be the first post on the page after this stream, and you can always zoom in and read through the post and get more information that way. So. Any other questions here? How strong of winds could this be? Could this end up being a derecho? Sorry, not sure how to spell it. So Kaylee, good question there. So for those who don't know, a derecho is a big line of storms that travels over 240 miles and produces wind gusts over 58 miles per hour, as well as significant wind gusts over 75 miles per hour along its path. They're pretty, once or twice a year, we see those here in Indiana. They're pretty rare, so they're not going to be every day or every severe risk. We're not going to get that. But when we do get them, they're pretty impactful. And tomorrow, I will say this, models do not really show a big line, big enough to be a derecho developing. That doesn't mean you should take it any less seriously, though, because that line, if it does develop, can pack a punch, no matter if it's 50 miles wide, 20 miles wide, or really thin of, 5 miles wide. It can still do as much damage on a localized basis still for those that impact. So I wouldn't expect there to be a derecho tomorrow just because models don't show a large area of storms developing. They're pretty localized and, small in nature. But still take it seriously just because it's not going to be a wide swath, perhaps. It's going to be still impactful regardless.
Yeah, and severe criteria, just as a refresher, it is 58 or greater mile per hour winds, quarter-size hail, which is 1 inch diameter or greater, or tornado. All of those three things make a storm severe. But in terms of winds tomorrow, I think 60 mile per hour winds would be more common in your severe thunderstorms, but it does have the potential for a few storms to perhaps become significant. 70 mile per hour winds or greater cannot be ruled out, but I think those significant wind gusts are going to be more on the sporadic nature tomorrow based on guidance that I am seeing here this evening. Not out of the question to see a significant wind gust mixed in somewhere in the state of Indiana, but widespread 75 plus, at least right now. It could change depending on confidence and how data is analyzed overnight tonight, but at least right now, 75 mile per hour gusts widespread over Indiana does not seem to be too high at this point in time. More of your baseline severe, with wind being the greater risk over a wider area, 60 miles per hour.
I see a question in here. Which model do you think will be likely to happen? That's really anybody's guess. Personally, I lean more so toward HRRR. I think we're going to have a little bit more scattered in nature storms. Or I probably have a line further north you go, probably into northern Indiana, into Michigan. But further south, I do expect storms to fire up, but more so scattered in nature, not really a big line. That'd be my expectation, personally. But, Caleb may have something different he thinks could happen too. It's really anybody's guess at this point.
It'll ultimately come down to how data looks tomorrow morning. We can sit here and speculate all we want based on the numbers that we see here tonight. But ultimately, it'll come down to, like we said earlier, mesoanalysis tomorrow, looking at the real data that we have in front of us, radar trends from that morning, and guidance early tomorrow morning, coinciding with that real-time data, just to see how it all trends. Ultimately, it'll come down to data in the atmospheric trends here tomorrow. But personally, I think northern Indiana has the best chance of seeing severe weather tomorrow. And a reason for that is you're closer to the area of low pressure. You're closer to that lift. You have better dynamics up there. But with that being said, severe weather parameters encompany the entire state tomorrow. We have severe weather parameters all the way from the Indiana-Michigan border all the way down to Kentucky and even further south than that. So severe weather potential really exists anywhere in the state of Indiana tomorrow. It's just ultimately where these storms decide to fire and how far south they're able to fire. That's the question, and that's the unknown right now. Model guidance, some models lean towards a statewide squall line, while others limit severe weather coverage to north of Indianapolis, north of I-70. And those questions really won't be known until tomorrow and how data trends here tomorrow. But we'll continue to analyze that data and have forecast updates for you guys on the pages. As soon as that data becomes analyzed and we're confident enough to put that in a forecast for you.
So a lot of location questions here in chat, and we're going to say it one more time here. The entire state of Indiana is underneath a severe risk here. It is highest in the orange swath there from Fort Wayne to South Bend through Lafayette, Indianapolis, all the way down toward Vincent, Evansville, and Terre Haute. Now, based on current model guidance, I think the better confidence of severe happening would be north of Indianapolis. Not going to say it's not going to happen south, but more confidence right now for northern Indianapolis. North of Indianapolis for severe weather does exist tomorrow based on current models. So everyone has a threat tomorrow. We can't really pinpoint when and where. Well, when, yes, we can really, but where exactly and who gets severe, who doesn't, we can't really pinpoint that. And no one, that's why it's a generalized risk. So the takeaway, everybody's in a risk tomorrow, and all hazards are possible. Wind, primary threat, hail, secondary, and a few tornadoes is your third threat. And that goes for everybody across the entire state. Emphasis, again, confidence is higher for storm coverage north of Indianapolis.
Yep, and also keep in mind your placement of the SPC risk here. Your green, your yellow, your orange may also shift overnight and tomorrow as we get a new outlook here tomorrow morning by the Storm Prediction Center. We may see that orange expand, shift, or even move north or south as new data is analyzed and confidence is gained as to exactly where severe weather is looking to happen and to what intensity of that as well. So the meteorologists and forecasters in Norman, Oklahoma at the Storm Prediction Center will be working very hard here tonight to analyze that data, interpret that data, and we'll be making their updated forecast here this morning after midnight.
All right, Caleb, with that said, been live here for about 40 minutes or so. So I think we're going to wrap things up here. Caleb and I will be live here at the first severe, or perhaps just before the first severe warning in the state tomorrow. So feel free to tune back in here tomorrow afternoon for severe weather coverage across the entire state. We'll be on here as long as the threat is continuing. So feel free to join us tomorrow. We'll keep you guys safe and walk you guys through warnings that come in, areas need to take shelter, so on and so forth. We got you guys covered here. So with that said, we are going to pop out of here. You guys stay safe. Stay tuned to the page. We'll have updates as we have more information here on models, as well as the latest SPC outlook that comes out at 2 o'clock in the morning. We'll post it bright and early for you guys when you wake up to look at. With that said, you guys enjoy your evening. We'll be out of here. Stay safe. We'll catch you tomorrow.